we're 1 month away from the May 12th hearing for contempt of court in the Civil Stalking Protection Order. I think Matthew is really lobbing as many metaphorical grenades as he can at me. And since he knows he can't directly contact me, he's contacting the Arts Council, he's contacting my employers. I'm Peter John Ross, a filmmaker from Columbus, Ohio. Over 10 years ago, this guy started harassing me online and he never stopped fixating on me. I decided to turn it into a documentary. I've been working on Social Media Monster for the past few years. The series of events are unfolding in real time as I've filed criminal charges against the guy, a Civil Stalking Protection Order, and things are just getting crazier. These are just behind-the-scenes updates to let everybody know what's going on with the film. What I want to talk about this time is the Greater Columbus Arts Council. The GCAC has been incredibly supportive of me as a filmmaker, as they are with a lot of filmmakers and artists in Columbus. We started working with them originally with our PBS show called Frame Lines, and then eventually they started offering these things called supply grants, which is giving you grant money to buy tools or educational items that help you further your professional experience as an artist. And in my case, I started using it to get certain types of gear that would increase the quality of what I was trying to do as a filmmaker. We're shooting on the tripod that I got last year from GCAC and the camera I just got in 6K for this video. So we're shooting right now with everything is, from grants from the Greater Columbus Arts Council. But these are grants for the artist. These aren't project support. That's an entirely different thing. Like what we did for Frame Lines was project support. This is just for me as an artist. In March of 2020, right as the pandemic started to hit, I had applied for a grant. I was given a grant. One of the stipulations you have from the Greater Columbus Arts Council is you're supposed to publicly thank GCAC for the donation in some of the art that you create with their grant money. So I had thanked them on the documentary page. That's not to say they funded the documentary in any way. Immediately, Matthew Berdyck contacted every single email he could find from the Greater Columbus Arts Council, including their board of directors. I got a phone call from GCAC that explained something a little more dire and serious. They said, we received an email for him that stated, essentially he said, if you give Peter John Ross this money, I'll kill myself. But and I don't know why he splits hairs. He goes, I never said that. What he said was, I'd be at a higher risk of suicide if you give him the grant money.
In Peter John Ross's court case, he claimed that I contacted the Columbus Arts Council and that I stated that if they gave him money, I would kill myself. What was actually stated to the Columbus Arts Council was, why would you give money to a film that could result in a suicide?
I'm not sure what the distinction between those really is or why that makes any significant difference, but he obviously did not kill himself. But part of the problem I had was at some point he had said something about staying in Akron at the time in March of 2020, right when the pandemic hit. He was staying with his son near Akron, Ohio. And I didn't know at the time, I didn't know his son's address at all. I didn't even know specifically which suburb area of Akron he was living in. But Berdyck had said something about he was working with getting criminal charges against me for things that aren't crimes, and said he was directly working with the city prosecutor in Akron. So I called her on the phone and I asked her about it, and she said, no, I don't know who that is, and I'm definitely not working with them to have you arrested for things you're apparently not doing. But then I said, well, here's where I'm deeply concerned is the guy's sending emails talking about being at high risk of suicide and nobody's doing anything. I then asked, it's like, can someone check? So they took it upon themselves to track down his son's address. They sent the sheriff or the local police to do a welfare check on Matthew to see if he was okay. He now claims that I caused a swatting incident. he wants to claim to the Greater Columbus Arts Council that he's suicidal on one hand, but then on the other hand, he wants to be angry that someone did a mental health check on him. You get whiplash trying to keep up with all the directions his mind goes. After that, the one thing, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, as I said, they require you to publicly thank them. I have not only a special exemption, I have a request from them to never promote that I am getting grant money from them on the internet because they don't want to be harassed by Matthew Berdyck.
The Greater Columbus Arts Council has been funding Peter John Ross for many years, giving him thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to make a film which is being used to attack my work for toxicwastesites.org.
Here we are this past Monday in April. They published on their own website, they're required to post a list of the people who are grantees, people who were awarded a grant. So my guess is that Burdick has a Google alert on my name. He knew I had a grant before I did and was on Twitter ranting and raving about it, both with individual tweets about it, tagging GCAC and complaining. I mean, I sent them an email apologizing that.
Now, what does the Greater Columbus Arts Council have to do with this? What he's doing is political propaganda. Now, when I first reached out to the Arts Council years ago, I was homeless. I was living in the street. And you can see that Mr. Ross is lying and that he is taking money under false pretenses from the city of Columbus.
I think it's more sad that Burdick is putting in all of this effort to try to get money taken away from me by GCAC. It's pathetic and sad to see Matthew Burdick try so hard to get people to not like me, like the Arts Council.
How should the Columbus Arts Council handle this matter? How should they have handled this matter? We're talking about a man who is applying for grant funding under false pretenses. We are talking about a man who is using funding from the city of Columbus, from the taxpayers, to fund a political attack on an activist who's engaging in reform efforts in Columbus, Ohio. And the city of Columbus itself is funding the propaganda campaign used to damage my efforts to reform the city. And the Greater Columbus Arts Council, what they did to me back then was because I was living in the street, they discriminated against me.
He has this complete fundamental misunderstanding, either intentionally to mislead people, to paint the scenario in a certain way, or just because he fundamentally actually doesn't understand how this works. The grants are not based on those kind of personal things. The grants are not, they're based on your application. Are you in good standing? Which I am. I can't tell if he's intentionally misunderstanding it just for the sake of trying to paint this public image, which I think is likely what it is. He keeps trying to say that GCAC, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, is somehow corrupt and working on behalf of the city of Columbus and the city prosecutor to create a propaganda film against Matthew Burdick. It's an arts council. It's a separate legal entity from the city. They don't take orders from the city. So in this video, Burdick is demanding that he's going to harass GCAC until they file police reports.
The Greater Columbus Arts Council needs to investigate this series of events. They need to file reports with the FBI. They need to file reports with the Attorney General's office and state police. They need to take it upon themselves to report everything that I'm saying to the proper authorities.
It's an arts council. They aren't law enforcement. And why would they have any involvement in investigating his allegations? If his allegations had any credibility, if he had the slightest hint of reputability, why don't you do your own investigation? Why are you always trying to get other people to do your job for you?
And it's pretty clear that the Columbus Arts Council and Peter John Ross and the local government would like to maintain their status quo. They would like to keep the city corrupt.
This entire situation with GCAC is Berdyck 101. He tries the same things with just new people. And in this case, it's not even new people. He tried this in 2020 and it failed. Why does he think it's going to work now? Doing the exact same thing. I'm going to contact an arts council about business that has nothing to do with art, accuse them of supporting a project they've never supported, and then expect them to do something different. Insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. There are some people or groups that would be like, I'd rather just have nothing to do with it and thereby nothing to do with you. An example of that being the Ohio channel and what happened with Framelines. It's like, we just don't want to deal with it. He's invented this whole thing that I'm looking for revenge for the cancellation of Framelines. And yet again, he's lying, saying he never contacted the channel to get the show canceled. I have the emails he sent. I didn't imagine the people I spoke to saying, he's the reason we canceled your show. It's like, again, it's a concept in psychology called gaslighting, where he's trying to make me question my reality. But the thing is, it's not making me question my reality. It's making me question, does he live in reality? Because it's not a gray area. There's no confusion over what transpired. I think I got an answer over the last few weeks to the giant question I've been wondering all this time. I've been wondering, is Matthew Berdyck so severely delusional that he believes these lies he's saying? Or is this a kind of performance, a kind of act, because he knows he's lying and he's just putting on a show for the internet to make it appear like he's a victim? He's intentionally lying and he knows he's lying. The greatest example is he still tries, I guess, to be insulting. He keeps saying, you're upset over your cable access show being canceled? And I guess I'm supposed to be upset about that because it's like he's trying to say that my show that was on PBS was actually just a cable access show. And I don't get angry about it. It's just because, again, for me, it just looks like, well, if you actually get a person interested in your story, like a journalist or anything like that, and he thinks they're going to research this, and when he says it's cable access and it turns out it's actually on PBS, they're going to know that he's just being insulting. They're going to know that he's actually exaggerating and lying. The other example is, this is how you can tell that he's knowingly lying, and it's very intentional. He very specifically says, I called the PBS station and they said that I never contacted them. Matthew knows that we started on PBS, on WOSU, and then we got on the Ohio channel, which was the point two station of every PBS station in the state of Ohio. And that's where Framelines lived for the majority of its run. And he knows he contacted the Ohio channel. But what he tries to say now is like, I never contacted WOSU. I have emails saying that I never spoke to them. And it's like, because it wasn't WOSU that you contacted years ago.
And so if anybody who's involved with this film is going to be publicly identified, you do not get to go out and run your mouth about me to your heart's content and then claim to be an unbiased journalist when you state that you have a relationship with Peter John Ross. And you're not going to sit there and let this guy go out into public and make these false allegations against me and profit from this movie and collect career accolades from it and then trash my organization, my name, my reputation, and then what? You never get held accountable for all the things that you've done?
Even anybody with a fainting interest in the documentary, he wants to harass.
For the past few weeks, Peter has taken to stating that there is a journalist involved in the production of this movie. From here on out, Seth, the journalist from NBC4i, is personally responsible for every single failure of his journalism.
He vowed to stay in Seth's life, who's operating the camera right now, and destroy his entire life and career for having any association with me and the documentary. And I actually believe that the singular reason that he doesn't go after Seth is because he can't pronounce his last name.
It's very possible. It's absolutely 100% possible.
And so, no matter what, Seth, you are personally responsible for every single error in this film. Now, Peter says, I won't sue.
I think what Berdyck's doing with GCAC right now and contacting my employer, I think either consciously or subconsciously, he knows this is coming to an end, that he is going to get arrested. So I think he's throwing his last punches before he's removed from society and put into a jail cell. The number of violations is getting worse and worse. The number of just general contempt. I mean, he's making videos saying that the judge in the case is corrupt.
The reality is that Judge Jeza Page, who is officiating over our case, my case between myself and Mr. Ross, is corrupt.
That just doesn't seem like a smart move, at least to me. But I mean, what the hell do I know? I'm just an indie filmmaker in Columbus, Ohio. I think the likelihood is very, very, very high that he's going to be held in contempt of court. I mean, there's so many blatant violations of the Civil Stalking Protection Order. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, he has sent over 40 individual messages to my employer, which is expressly forbidden in the Civil Stalking Protection Order. So I have to file another police report, another contempt of court filing, and that's going to have a separate hearing from the one we already have in May. So it's just making everything worse. I mean, I'm flabbergasted at this point as to what is the motive to keep going like this. But it's become kind of a snake eating its own tail at this point. He wants the attention. He wants to be involved in some way, and he wants to desperately harass me and anyone associated with me. And it terrifies me that nobody in government wants to take this on. So I'm going to keep fighting until they do. And I think May 12th might actually be that day.